Hannah here. Grillo here.
Sullivan here.
Gavich here.
Guzikowski here.
Oldani here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
And now the minutes of July 11th, 2023. They are contained in your packet. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, I'll give you a minute or so. If there's no further discussions, questions, or concerns, motion please.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of July 11th, 2023.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call beginning with Christine.
Hannah, aye. Grillo, aye.
Sullivan abstains.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
We will now go to review and discuss the report on recent Common Council actions. Carrie?
Council approved the following: an ordinance amending several sections of Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code, which is the zoning code. Approved an ordinance amending the official map for a portion of the northwest quarter of Section 28, which is the mapped unimproved right-of-way affecting the properties at 225 and 237 East Ryan Road. A resolution approving the condominium plat for the Royal Estates condominium for the properties at 9102, 9120, and 9140 South 27th Street. A waiver of road and highway reservation affecting the properties at 9102, 9120, and 9140 South 27th Street. And a resolution approving a certified survey map submitted by Matthias Chapa and Nicole Rolfson and Bernie and Carol Weedy for the properties at 9709 South Howell Avenue and 9676 South Fox Run. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Item 5 is review and discuss a report on recent Board of Housing and Zoning Appeal actions. Carrie?
The BOZA met on July 10th, held one hearing, and that was for a request by Oak Shores Apartments, and that was to basically replace, or request a variance to replace light fixtures in excess of the maximum 3,500 kelvins. And the reason that they were requesting that is because the fixtures that they had chosen or were able to obtain were set to a maximum a Kelvin rating, a temperature rating of 4,000. And for various reasons, that was something that they wanted to pursue. Unfortunately, the Board of Zoning Appeals was unable to determine that they were able to submit or approve of their appeal. The reason that they were asking for it was because they are going to be right next to single-family residential to the north, and they were replacing the fixtures throughout their property. So we are going to be working with the applicants on a process moving forward, but that variance was denied. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, questions, concerns with the findings from Board of Housing and Zoning Appeals? Okay. Seeing none, item 6 is the review and discussion report on the recent quarterly Parks Recreation Commission actions. September 12th will be our next report. That will get us to new business. And item 7A is review site, landscape, lighting, and related plans submitted by Katie Kincaid, Texas Roadhouse, for an expansion of the parking area on the properties at 1489 West Broadwick Place and 7727 South Highgate Avenue. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is actually a request for a parking lot expansion for Texas Roadhouse. Plan commissioners may remember that the original plans were reviewed in February of 2022, and we had been informed that they had made an agreement, a signed agreement with the owner of the property to the north, which is still the Highgate Development, the developers for the entire PUD, for the expansion that we're about to discuss tonight. It is adjacent to and immediately north of their existing parking area, which will be accessed by the existing Broadwick Place, so they'll be making a couple of modifications to that driveway access for the current restaurant. They will also be extending the access drive to the west. It'll be a two-way, 24-foot wide drive aisle, and the expansion is for 20 stalls. This is the existing site plan that was approved in February 2022, And this is what they are proposing. So again, immediately north, and what's going to be separating the drive aisle and the existing drive aisle and the proposed parking stalls is a median that will be landscaped, and they will extend the landscaping that is along the I-94 property line to the north to extend that buffer area with the required landscaping per the PUD. They have submitted lighting plans. Those appear to be in conformance with the PUD requirements. There are a couple of items that would need to be amended for the landscape plan. Basically, there is one utility or transformer that is shown on their plans, which is on the screen right now. We do note that there is an additional either transformer or utility box that is in the same area, so they both need to be screened. Otherwise, it appears that everything meets the PUD requirements with the exception of the installation at maturity, or the installation height and the height of the plants at maturity. So those are the requirements for updating the landscape plan. With that, there is a suggested motion for consideration on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before I go to the commission, does the applicant want to say anything or wait on questions?
Good evening. I'm Emily Bernal, Bernal Development Services. I'm a consultant for Texas Roadhouse. I honestly don't have a lot to add. Carrie's very thorough in her presentation. I'm really here more or less for your questions.
Okay.
So,
Hang tight.
Sure.
Maybe stay there. Let's start with Chelsea.
No questions, thank you.
What's wrong? Fred?
I have a question. Is the additional parking that you're requesting adequate enough to help you through this addition?
yes.
Or do you plan on additional parking down the road?
No, this is the desired number that they've had. This honestly was part of their original lease agreement. It's just something that they waited to install and get approved after opening. They wanted to see how the store did, and fortunately, it sounds like it's doing very well.
Thank you.
Don?
No questions.
Chris?
No questions.
Matt?
No questions.
Ron?
Been there many times where we have parking on the street or on the road going out, so I'm sure this is welcomed. But otherwise, no questions.
Nothing here.
Thank you.
I agree. Completely warranted. The place is packed all the time. It's doing really well. Actually, I think when they came through, I really hate to say this, didn't we trim back the parking a little bit originally?
No, they actually, the first plans that we had showed this additional parking, but we didn't have the agreement in place with the PUD landowner. So we had to wait for that to be submitted as well, and then there was just some coordination that had to happen with the parking design. So that's why this was a little bit long in coming, and also because they wanted to make sure that they weren't over parking essentially. When the rest of the PUD develops, then we'll have opportunities for shared parking should that be needed as well.
Okay. Thank you, Carrie. All right. I have no questions myself, so we can motion on 7A.
Holdani moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and related plan submitted by Katie Kincaid, Texas Roadhouse, for the expansion of the parking lot on the properties at 1489 West Broadwick Place and 7727 South Highgate Avenue with the following conditions. 1. That all relevant code requirements, conditions of the planned unit development, Highgate, and plans approved by the Plan Commission on February 10th, 2022 remain in effect. 2. That the landscape plans are revised to meet PUD and applicable code requirements. 3. That the plans are revised to include locations for all mechanicals, transformers, and utilities, all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground, building, and rooftop shall be screened per code. 4. All light sources shall be full cutoff fixtures with the light source fully shielded and directed downward. The color temperature of the fixtures shall conform to PUD requirements. 5. That all revised plans, site building, landscape, etc., are submitted in digital format for review by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Dawn.
Hello, I.
Sullivan, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7B, conditional use permit. It's a review and a request submitted by Alan Kirchhoff, 7B Building and Development for a conditional use permit for a car wash on the facility on the property at 2440 West Ryan Road. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request for a conditional use permit on an existing property that is sort of affected by a PUD, and we'll get to that. The proposal is for a car wash facility with a roughly 4,300 square foot building. It will be automatic, so that it's not one of those where you have multiple stalls. It will have an office component, and there will be vacuums that are included. And on the screen right now, you get a little bit of an idea of what the proposed site plan looks like. They are proposing to have 2 access lanes with 2 pay kiosks, anticipating 4 employees per shift and 2 shifts between the hours of 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. That's 7 days a week. We don't have any information on vacuums, whether or not those will be available for patrons outside of those regular business hours, but that would be up to the applicant to determine. They are expecting 20 to 38 customers at any given time. There is a typo in the report that says per day. That's at any given time. The one concern that we have with that, amongst a couple others for conditions and restrictions should this move forward, is this is considering use of all of the parking stalls plus 20 cars in the queuing lanes as being occupied by customers. There are 4 parking stalls that are reserved for employees, so obviously those employees would kind of take away from the customer parking. We also do not have dimensions to determine whether or not those lanes can accommodate 20 vehicles. So we have a couple of pieces of information that would still need to be submitted, and obviously, if this moves forward, it would have to come back to the Plan Commission for site and building plan review. But 18 parking stalls overall are provided in the concept plan. It will be accessed via the existing shared driveway off of Ryan Road, so no new curb cut. This would go through the Pick and Save parking lot to access on the north. That is already an agreement that is in place and has been in place. There are easements. They are anticipating weekly deliveries to the site by box truck. And because of the automatic nature of the car wash, the required number of parking stalls is per bay or per stall. There's only 1 stall because it's one of those automatic that just kind of pulls the car through. So technically only 1 parking stall is required, but obviously whenever you get employees and customers into the mix, more than 1 parking stall is going to be required. So we do have some conceptual renderings of what the building and site would look like. This is as you're approaching going westbound on Ryan Road. And this is what the view would be from Ryan Road. Now the parcel is kind of oddly shaped, so the building is actually facing diagonally to Ryan Road. This would be interior to the property. And these are showing the entrance and exit points. So a couple of things for consideration if this were to move forward that would be included in the conditions and restrictions. And if we go back to the site plan, we'll be able to kind of talk about these a little bit more. The bypass or escape lane is past the pay kiosks, and we did talk with the applicants regarding that. We still have that concern. If there were to be some emergency situation, if there were to be somebody just changed their mind or whatever happens, there's no way for anybody to get out of the pay lane without paying for something. So we do have that concern. Also, the escape lane, which is, if you can see it on my cursor right about here, that angle is very difficult for somebody in that closest pay lane to actually maneuver and get out of. So we do have those concerns. That would be something that we could work through with the applicant and their consultants if this were to move forward before it goes to site and building plan review. We did not receive any conceptual architectural details for the kiosks or for those menu boards. So obviously those details would have to comply with code. Excuse me. In terms of the number, the size, location, and the materials. Again, those things would be reviewed at site and building plan review, but we would still have restrictions in conformance with code requirements. We do also have concerns for the building architecture. Because the building is in excess of 100 feet in length per code, there needs to be architectural recesses, projections, some kind of way to break up the building. Also, we don't really have an allowance for just a flat roof. And there are some materials concerns as well. Signage on the building that's been shown, signage at all on the property, those are all placeholders. Those will need to be in conformance with code requirements or go through a sign appeal process. We also need enhanced landscaping on the south. That's both for code compliance and for screening purposes, especially for those vehicles that are going to be making almost a 90-degree turn with their headlights kind of going into oncoming traffic. So we do need to address those areas, as well as code compliance for landscaping in general. And screening. And then also we need to ensure that lighting is meeting code requirements. We don't have all of those details just yet. Shielding, directing downward, cutoff, maximum Kelvin, maximum lumens for building mounted or canopy mounted lights will also be required. So the Commission's initial review and recommendation of a proposed conditional use permit is not an endorsement of any site architectural, landscaping, or lighting plan that may be required as part of the permit. A more detailed review of any plans required by the CUP will be conducted by staff and the Plan Commission subsequent to the issuance of the conditional use permit and accompanying conditions and restrictions. So just because these are the plans that have been presented for your information tonight does not mean that these are the plans that you are held to approve should this move forward. With that said, there is a suggested motion on the screen for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Does the applicant want to say a few words, or you just want to wait on questions? Okay. Christine, you want to start this time?
I have no questions, thank you.
Dawn?
No, I think it's a great use of the space, but I don't have any additional questions.
Matt?
I have no concerns or questions.
Chris?
This is in my district. I have received one call opposing it. And I told them that I feel that this is really a good use of this location. So I will report back to the call what the results are from our meeting tonight. So other than that, I have no concerns.
Okay. Don?
No issues. Thank you.
Brad?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the exit from the wash itself and going out. I look like it's a little tight and a chance of running into the people coming out of the cleaning area. So that curve and section, I just see a potential being a little tight.
Well, to start off, my name is Bon Fitzgerald. I'm with Priority Engineering. I'm here in place of Alan Kirchhoff with 7B Building Development. My team was the one that put together the civil portion of these plans. In regards to the turning radiuses, right now we have them designed to the minimum which the overall client requires them to be for turning of passenger vehicles. But it's definitely something that we can take a look at. Right now we're anticipating that to be a full stop at both of those directional changes, so that someone coming out of the car wash, you see someone, it'll be a typical, I guess, two-way intersection to leave the site.
Okay, well, I just kind of looked at that radius and a combination of the exit for two areas coming in to go out, and I just think it's a little tight. So you may want to look at some of that radius
Understood.
that you have. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Jossie?
I do have a couple questions. Can you go through the details on the stacking plans?
On the stacking plans? So as Carrie had mentioned, we have two pay stations on the west side of the property. Heading north, two pay lanes to provide queuing. Typically on the plans, we will provide a block image of a car to show how many we have on there, and that's something we can definitely provide an exhibit on a further date to verify that. It does narrow down to a one-way, or a one-lane entrance to the pay stations. That's just based on the site constraints and how much vertical separation we need to get all building, parking, drive lanes. Is there anything you would like more information on, details regarding that?
Just a little. Carrie, can you show me where the entrance is?
So the entrance to the site is at the north, and then patrons would follow toward the west, enter into 2 lanes, and the pay kiosks are right here. And then it would narrow down. Here's your escape lane, and this is the entry into the car wash.
And the reason I asked that question, so the queue, would it be all the way at the entrance if you're queuing 20 plus cars, or at most 38?
Typically, we'd stop it before the intersection, so we wouldn't plan to have cars piling out into Pick and Safe's parking lot or blocking any patrons from entering the site and entering the vacuum areas.
I guess I'm not understanding. So you would stop people from going that way? Or after you have 20 cars, or you're...
Yeah, so 20 cars is the estimation of how many you can fit in behind the pay stations up to right where you have that 4-way intersection. So
okay.
that's the count of cars that we've projected. That wouldn't, what I'm saying is we wouldn't account for any cars that would be outside of that or in the intersection or wrapping around through the Pick and Save parking lot.
Okay.
That's definitely not the intention with the site.
So I guess what's the plan? Because 20 and 38, that's a big jump.
Yeah, so 20 to 38, it's not that number is probably not representing the queue of cars actually behind the pay station. So that would account for cars that are in line after the pay station. That could account for employees, for vacuum users. On a typical day, I think for the small market, it'd be 250 patrons throughout the day. So I'm sure a traffic engineer could, back that up more. But yes, hopefully that helps.
Oh, yes, that helps a lot. And so you enter on that side and one car exits at a time, correct?
Yes, yep, one car will be exiting. So it's a conveyor system, so no cars can pass each other within the building. And it'll be timed. You'll have operators at the start to tell patrons to pull up and set their car into neutral and get cars out at a timely fashion.
Now, there's also an office area, so will the patrons go into the office, or do they call the office, like with
No,
the button?
so the office is for employees only. There will be a restroom which is open to the public, and that's on the exterior of the building, entryway on the exterior. But for office purposes, it would just be for staff.
Oh, okay. And then one additional question. I don't know if it's the applicant or Carrie. So where this is, there's is it a water basin, right?
Detention pond.
Detention pond to the east, is that the east?
Correct.
Yeah. So what is the impact of putting this here with this detention pond?
So my understanding is that there's an existing stormwater management plan for that facility. So it's something that we'll have to look at moving forward with site and building. So we'll take a look at what our impact is to that. What was it designed to handle with our parcel being developed, and also any other code requirements that need to be brought up in line and to date.
Okay, thank you.
I really don't have any questions, just comments. For the conditional use, I'm okay with it. Property's appropriate for it, I believe. Just, Carrie had the list of concerns staff had, at the exit lanes and turn radiuses, things of that nature. Continue to work with staff through that. Come up with a workable solution. They're really good at what they do. So next time through, it'll all be right. Hopefully. So any other discussion, questions? Okay. Motion, please.
Guzekowski will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approves a conditional use permit for a car wash on the property of 2440 West Ryan Road after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Plan Commission's review at the next meeting.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call. Matt, you want to start?
Sullivan, aye.
Bekavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye. Perla, aye.
Okay, good luck. 7C is a plan review, a review of site, building, and related plans by Elena Fashion, Driven Brands, Inc. for modifications to the previously approved building plans for the car wash facility on the property at 6900 South 27th Street. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This may look familiar. This was originally reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission on May 23rd. So in that review, you had some site and building plans for pay kiosks, for a trash enclosure, for an equipment enclosure, vacuum stations that had canopies over them, some building modifications. And the request this evening is particular to the building itself. So on the screen, showing the north elevation on the left-hand side is what was approved by the Plan Commission, and you'll note that in the yellow box is an EFS tower element. And on the right is what they're proposing, which is basically to remove what they had requested originally. This is what it would look like from the south elevation. So on the left-hand side, the tower element can only be seen on one side. This tower element is already existing, and that's interior to the property. So that's on the east side, essentially. And then on the right-hand side are the proposed building modifications, of course, showing that EFS tower element removed. Just giving you also east and west, just completely removing what had been approved in May. So we do still have the conditions of the previous approval from May that we're proposing to be in effect here. So just a couple of modifications with regard to the lighting, and basically everything else is just asking for them to meet those same conditions. If the Plan Commission wishes to move forward, that is included in the suggested motion on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Applicant, you want to say a few words before we start, or you want to wait on questions? Okay, she's indicating she'll wait. We'll go right to the commission. Chauncey, you want to start us off?
Sure, I do have a few questions.
My name is Stephanie Keith. I'm representative of PMDG and Driven Brands. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go.
One question that I had, just want to understand why the change to the tower.
So it is my understanding that the change of the tower occurred based on the limitations to 15% that could be EFS. And once that became so small, it really was not part of a structure that was going to be beneficial. There was no decorative use to it anymore, so it would also create a snowdrift. So we ended up just removing it.
Just a quick question to Carrie. Was this tower something recommended by planning?
No, this was something that was proposed, and the 15% would have basically affected just the west elevation, and that actually is not represented in these elevations that were approved by the Plan Commission, because once we mentioned that there was a 15% limitation on EFS per elevation, that tower was modified to what is on the left-hand side of the screen. So it originally wrapped around to the west elevation, and then that was just modified, so that was essentially just on the north.
And then another question, in our packet, it identifies that some of the items that were addressed in May weren't addressed with these changes. Did you receive any feedback on that, Carrie?
They're still working on the plans so that they can meet those requirements. That's why there are still conditions of approval.
Okay. And so the applicant is open to all of those changes suggested in May?
Those were conditions of approval that are just being carried over.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
what the Plan Commission had approved originally, and that's what we're recommending for approval tonight.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Fred?
Yeah, I just have a question about the vacuum area on the west end, just next to the exit of the wash. Is there space, are you having those spaces open? I see that there's 3 vacant spots or parking spots. And are those just kind of open or a vague, I mean, they're not being used for parking, are they?
Which parking spaces are you indicating
If
again?
you look on the west end, just coming out of the exit, the wash, okay, there's 3 stalls that you have right there. Is that really just for parking people as far as employees or cleaning or whatever? I just think that those 3 spots, if they're going to be utilized, they could create a problem for the exit coming out of the wash.
So these are the same plans that were reviewed in May. Those plans have not changed. But it does indicate that on the, at least on the site plan with the notation here, that vacuum equipment would be relocated there. So the expectation, at least from staff's point of view, is that all of those stalls would include vacuums. If they don't, that's fine. But that would indicate, at least from my interpretation, that that they will be moving the vacuums to all of those stalls.
I just see a potential right at the exit coming out of the wash. And those 3 spots, if people are utilizing them, the potential of something happening, somebody bumping into somebody.
And you know, if that's something that we would have to look at, then
Well, it's just a thought, a
Sure.
comment that I had, that I noticed. Okay, that's it.
Yep. Don?
I have no questions.
Chris?
I have no questions.
Matt?
None, thank you.
Dawn?
Nothing for me. Nothing here.
No, I don't have anything either. Nice to see the trash enclosures all blocked, as well as the vacuum equipment. Appreciate that. I do understand the tower. It's unfortunate, but I get it. Probably save you a little money in the end. As far as the exit, it's probably existing that way now with people parking, so it is a 17-foot wide one-way. So hopefully, people are respectful and nice, but something that can be looked into. I think it was a well-taken point. With that, I have no further questions or comments, so a motion on 7C unless there's more discussion.
Holdani moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Elena Fashion Driven Brands, Inc. with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that the photometric and lighting plans are provided for review and approval by the Department of Community Development and Electrical Inspector prior to submission of permit applications. Lighting plans shall include all existing and proposed lighting for the site, building, and kiosks. Canopy lights shall be limited to 25-foot candles, fully non-surfaced mounted or recessed fixtures in conformance with section 17.0509B1J. Lighting plans shall also include color temperature and cut sheets for fixtures. 3, that landscape plans are updated to incorporate code requirements. 4, that all required buildings, electrical sign permits are obtained for the structures and menu boards. And 5, that all final plans, site building, etc. are submitted in digital format to review by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call, beginning with myself. Aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Holdani, aye.
Seepert, aye.
Jambar, aye.
And I. Carloy.
Sullivan, aye.
Okay. That'll get us just about to adjournment. Dawn, anything going on at the market?
Market's back. We had a week off and Now we have the second half, 12 more weeks.
Okay. And we are running into a heat wave here, so please be aware of the heat index and what's going on and the complications it can bring, particularly if you have health issues. And also keep an eye on your pets. Awfully stressful for pets this time of year with this kind of heat. Other than that, motion for adjournment.
Perillo moves to adjourn at 6:37.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Chris.
Guzekowski, aye.
Holdani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Perillo, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Gavich, aye. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Have a great week.